Hey everybody, and it's running a little slow tonight. I had a little trouble getting on. Uh, oh my word, everybody's blowing up the chat room here. Hi everybody. All right. Yeah. Hey. Hi everybody. Watched the movie Courageous today, Angie. Was it any good? I've not seen it. So. All right. Hope he's okay. Must be practicing his singing. I know you ain't talking about me because ain't no practice gonna help that. So. Hey, Nikki, Angie, that was very good. Okay, I don't know that I know I haven't seen it. So, all right. Hey, any feedback from worship services this morning? I always like to ask and kind of see where everybody's at. Any feedback from this morning? I know, again, thinking back to like a month ago, the last time we were together. It seems like forever ago now, but we'll be back together again someday. But I just wondered if you guys have any feedback from this morning. Thank you, Eric. Love the prayer on the steps. Yeah, the prayer on the steps was because I'm trying to find a way to change the scenery up a little bit, and that's what I decided to try. So, all right. So, well, good deal. All right, you guys enjoyed the communion. All right, good. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully this doesn't go on through next month, but if it does, we'll pull a communion out again. Yes, Parker, believe me, my friend, I'm missing it too. Bill, cheap help was hard to find, buddy. I don't know what to tell you. All right, good. All right. Hi, Beth. Hi, Jess. Miriam. All right. Very good. Well, any of you who've read the Dangerous Prayers chapter, you already know it's very short. Oh, I'm not getting kicked. I didn't just get kicked off, did I? Am I still here? My computer just put up a warning. Am I still online? I have no way to tell if this is still broadcasting or not. I hope I'm still on. No, Easter in the parking lot is not happening. So we will be doing Easter in some form like this morning. So again, the band can't get together either. And Daryl and Jean have recorded some stuff at their house. So what we have for next week won't be quite what the last 2 weeks have been, but it will be something. So we'll be here, but we won't be together. We're not doing a parking lot. So, all right. Yes. Thank you. I thank you because a little warning box popped up, and I didn't know if I got kicked off or not. So, all right. These are the kind of things experienced YouTubers such as myself should know, I guess. So, hey, Jack and Cheryl, welcome. Glad to have you. So, all right. As I was saying before, the chapter is very short. So, I didn't. It was a quick read. I usually read them through 2 or 3 times. And hey, Randy Ryan. Hi, Michelle. Hey, Darren. Everybody from all over Ohio now showing up. Cool. We have a very, very sad chapter, Eric. You're absolutely right. It's a very short chapter, so we're gonna have a conversation. I have some things to point out that we may be having discussion, but keep in mind that we're in phase 2 of 3 phases of the Dangerous Prayers. Tonight we'll be talking about what it means, the breaking part. That's the center phase. So we're on chapter 2.7 for those of you who may be wanting to follow along in the book. And just a quick rundown. Last week we knew that Craig had a friend who came to join him and to be a part of the church in the city where he was working, due to a falling out that Jason and Craig had over something Jason had done. And again, he doesn't go into any detail, so I can only speculate as to what that was. But they had an argument. Which, look, when you're doing something stressful like that, it's going to happen. They had an argument, and Jason kind of stormed off. Craig gave him space, which was the right thing to do, and Jason ended up taking his own life. I'm sure not just because of his conversation with Craig, but apparently what he had done was bad. Again, I don't know what it was, but whatever it was that he did, it was more than he could deal with. And Jason seems like the kind of person that may have had some other things going on. So he ended up taking his own life. And then Craig is devastated, as you can imagine. So, so this is, last week or yesterday, we were talking about how Craig and Gary were getting together and talking about what it means to be broken and how God is going to work through this whole thing and cause Craig to grow. That's what their conversation was about. And, Craig kept saying, well, this happened. Is it this? And that happened. Is it that? And Gary kept saying, no, my man, when it happens, you'll know what it is. Well, clearly losing his best friend in this way would have been a horrendous experience for anyone. And Craig was really hit hard by this. So, all right, so let's get started here. We're on, like I said, chapter 2.7, titled Breaking Bad. And very first sentence, because he used the analogy of the Jack in the Box, which is that bizarre toy that they used to give kids where you turn the crank and the monster thing jumps out and scares you. He's talking about the moment when God was going to really break him down as sort of being like that, where you're kind of watching and not sure when it's going to happen. And so that was, he kind of expanded on that analogy in yesterday's reading. Here he says, my Jack in the Box finally popped up in a way that was both undeniable and far worse than anything I could have ever anticipated. So my question based on that is, if Craig had ever considered how awful this was going to be, clearly losing your best friend this way is, I don't want to say it's the worst thing that could happen, but it's high on the list. If he had considered that his friend would take his own life, how do you think that would have affected his choices? And as you're considering that, I want you to take into consideration both positive and negative changes. What would he have done differently? And those differences, those things that he could have done differently, or things he would have done differently had he had he realized that this could have been a possibility. Those differences certainly could have been positive, even though I'm not sure there was much he could have done to prevent this. But some of the things he would have done differently or could have done differently could have also been negative. Because, and we're going to talk about this as we kind of walk through this, like I said, very short chapter. I don't know that the blame for what happened here, I don't know that this lands entirely at Craig's feet. I'm not sure it lands at anybody's feet except for Jason's. And I know that's cruel to say, but there's a lot of what ifs that go into circumstances like this. And I'm sure all of you have been touched by suicide at some point. And coming out of those situations, there are just what if after what if after what if after what if. And certainly, are there things that Craig could have done differently that would have made this different? Yeah. And if only he had a crystal ball and would have known, he would have done them differently. But I'm not ready to put blame, and I don't think Craig does either, puts all the blame at his feet. He may have a lot of regret, but I don't know that he deserves any blame for this. So what would he have done differently? Candy says, wouldn't have given him so much space. Randy says, would have reached out to him. Teresa, maybe talked to his friend more in depth. Okay. All right. See, now you guys are getting it here. So Candy, Randy, and Teresa are saying, here are some positive steps he could have taken. I agree with all of them. But Luke, you see here, has the other side where he says, if he realized how fragile Jason was, maybe he wouldn't have called him out. And then you got a situation, and again, I don't know what was happening. I don't know if what was happening was illegal. I don't know if somebody was getting hurt. I have no idea. But apparently it was significant enough that Craig says, well, I have to address this. And then when he did, this horrible thing happen. And I think that we have to be careful about that because, yes, Craig being afraid to call Jason out on this would have been a bad thing, even in light of what happened. Craig couldn't let it go. I have to assume it was something bad. I mean, it wasn't like, Craig left the light on in the kitchen. I don't think it was anything like that. It was something that was significant and very upsetting, and something that Craig could not and should not have let go. So if he would have known and not done that, I mean, maybe endangered people at the church. It could have. I mean, there's a lot of things there, and Craig had to say something because it must have been significant. Again, we're not talking about, he didn't clean up after youth group. This is a big deal, and that's what we need to see here. And Candy is absolutely right. Hindsight is always 20/20. But hindsight is maybe something to learn lessons, maybe something to know for next time, but you never know. And again, I'm going to talk about that more as we move through here. And hey, Dennis and Trina, welcome. So you can see here that there are a lot of things that conceivably could have been done differently, but they aren't all good. And that's what I want to make very clear here. It wasn't like, Craig somehow goaded him on in this. And that is exactly right, Darren. Jason put Craig in a no-win situation because because clearly whatever it was that he did, it was bad enough that Jason knew he shouldn't have done it. Again, and I'm not going to speculate. I don't know what it was, but there's no upside for Craig because he has to call this out because and again, I want to be real clear. This is not a minor thing. It had to be something pretty major. It had to be something that was really a significant issue, and Craig had to call that out, and he did. And the worst thing happened, but that's true, Joe. I agree. Others people's choices affect us, but they don't define us. However, and because of that, the truth of your statement there, Joe, I have to point out that whatever it was Jason did, again, and I'm going to keep saying this, I'm going to get annoying with this because it's very important to realize I don't know what he did, but whatever it was that he did, it couldn't be let go because now the choice to not address it now lives at Craig's doorstep. If he doesn't say something, particularly if somebody's getting hurt or somebody's, something bad's going to happen, if Craig doesn't say something, that choice lives at Craig's door. And that's difficult. Yeah, Craig was just being a Gary. See, he was trying to be a Gary. And he did it did say that Craig he himself said he got a little heated and he was mad. But I think that was more in response to Jason's response. It wasn't caused by what Jason did. I don't think that Craig ran out to him and was like, I'm going to beat you down. I don't think there was any of that. But I think that at the end of the day, he was trying to do what had been done for him. Craig was trying to do what had been done for him by Gary, and Jason did not receive it graciously, and that's an understatement. So that is true. How could God then use it for His glory? Exactly. If it's not addressed, Joe, and never, there's no chance at redemption. Unfortunately, Jason's response initially to Craig, which was so poor, it definitely delayed the repentance process, but certainly his decision later wrecked any hope at God using it for His glory. And that's a difficult place to be. So, hey, Anna Kay. Oh, Kim, there was clearly other things going on in Jason's life. Clearly, I do not for 1 second think that everything was hunky-dory in Jason's life until this confrontation with Craig, and then he went and took his own life. I do not, and Craig didn't suggest that either. So I absolutely agree with you on that one. So good. All right. Okay, now one of the things that I noticed here, and actually, I need to give a disclaimer here real quick. I don't want anybody to interpret anything I'm going to talk about here tonight as me. I mean, I'm real clear about defending Craig in this, but at the same time, I don't. I got to think of a nice way to say this. I don't want any of you to think that I'm putting Jason down. Okay, the poor man clearly had some things going on that were bigger than he was, and I have great compassion for Jason. But Jason made a choice that is the most selfish choice a person could make, and that is he left every single person in his life, including his wife, his kids, his friends, his church, to ask some horrible questions about how did we miss this, and that is the most selfish thing anybody can do, because they're going to live with that forever. And that's really hard. And having been around, people who have made choices like this and walked with families myself, I can tell you that the pain that they cause, whatever it was they're trying to get away from, nothing could be that bad. But having said that, I'm not victim blaming here. I'm not trying to say Jason is a bad person. Jason was obviously a very good person who was troubled. And I, along with every other person who knows this situation at all, including all of us in this chat room, wish it did not go this way. And nobody more than me. But at the same time, I got to call this for what it is, because there's a lot of pressure that Craig is going to feel because of this that are not fair. That's not fair. And I'm going to talk about exactly why that is as we work our way through this chapter. And I'm telling you, regret is one of the heaviest burdens you can carry. And whenever somebody goes and does something like here, what Jason does, the regret that causes is absolutely crushing. So I want to be real clear about that. My issue is not with Jason. Jason was clearly a troubled man, and he made a poor choice. That doesn't mar who he is. It doesn't make me think any less of him. I'm sure he's a very good person, and he's in heaven now with God where he belongs. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the choice that he made put a lot of good people in a bad situation. Okay, so all my comments, please hear them in that light. I'm not trying to be down on Jason. I feel very sorry for him. But since me and you and Craig, we're all left here in this life, we have to deal with the consequences of what's happened here. And sometimes we can't gloss over that. So that's where we're at tonight. And we can continue that way we are. And Joyce, I'm sure you understand more than anyone around how bad that can be, because this is something that touches a lot of families, a lot of communities. And it's just gut-wrenching. It's awful. So all right. So the next thing that one of the first details that he tells us about Jason, after saying, he came to be a part of the church, he says, Jason left the church he was pastoring. So he was the pastor of a church in a different town. Again, I have no idea what the geography is here. I don't know how far he went. But Jason left the church he was pastoring and moved to our city. So he left a job. He left an appointment of some kind to a church. He left his connections. He left everything. And again, if Jason was a troubled man, this may have been a great thing. And he came to the city where Craig was working, again, whatever city that was. And you'll find out was not working at the church. So he left a pastoral position to come help at this church as a volunteer, and he got another job. What does that tell us about Jason? Based on that detail, what could we maybe infer about Jason's situation? The fact that he was willing to leave a job, come to a new town, leave everything behind for a volunteer position in a church. What might that tell us about Jason? What does that tell us about Jason? He left a job. He was searching, needed a change. Bingo. It's exactly right, Kim and Darren. It's exactly what's going on. Clearly, Jason knew he needed a fresh start. And they running from something. Yep, Janine, Randy, he was looking for a fresh start. Clearly, I mean, yeah. So if he was willing to do all that, he had problems long before he ever got affiliated with his church. Yeah, running from, he was unstable. Yep, running away from, possibly giving up on something. Sure, he felt unworthy to get a similar position. Again, that could very well be looking for a new beginning. Eric, good. Perhaps lost his faith, Joe. I mean, yeah, this new start. I mean, could very well have brought with it that kind of thing. Maybe the pressure in his current position, Susan. Maybe that was more than he could deal with. A lot of times, that's what we want to do. Is not necessarily cut and run, but a chance to step into a new situation. Living. Serving churches is a very high pressure thing, and he may have wanted to get away from that, which very well could. Okay, Darren, Bill, Janine, and Joe, good. Angie, I think he has some issues going on at the other church and wanted a new beginning. I certainly wouldn't argue with that. Yep, his family and his friends and the people who knew him, Barb, are always going to have that question. That question is always going to be there. Yep. So now, do you think, here comes a yes or no question. And it's interesting that he waits until halfway through the book now to tell us the story of Jason. Do you think Jason inspired this book? I mean, I know not all of you have the book, but based on what you've heard me talk about with it and the discussions we've had, the fact that God uses 3 phases of moving in our lives. He searches us, he breaks us, and he sends us. He sends us, we're getting to next week. Do you think that Jason's story inspired this book? Yes or no? Got a yes from Jess, Eric, yes, right, Randy, yes, Tracy, yes. Do you see why? Do you see why Jason's story could have inspired this book? Yeah, okay. Yeah, you guys got this. Good deal. Okay. Hi, Beth. So, all right, good deal. Yes, Anna Kay. Yeah, that's it. Parker, good. So, do you think the brokenness inside of Jason could have been healed or at least dealt with in a better way had Jason followed the design of this book? Had Jason allowed God the chance to search him? If Jason had allowed God to break him in a far more healthy way than whatever happened here, and then after that took place, allowed God to send him. I mean, I know that's kind of a self-answering question, but I think Jason's story would have had a far better experience, a far better outcome had that process happened first, rather than Jason jumped right to the end of the send me part. And so I think some time of reflection, of allowing God to work in there, and I see a lot of people jumping in to agree. So I think we could see that. So I think Craig's self-reflection back on Jason's situation made him say, I think we need a book called Dangerous Prayers. And I think that's how this book came to exist. And Bill, he was clearly broken prior to this. Absolutely. And Eric, there's not a doubt in my mind, God absolutely had a plan for Jason, and it was not this. No way. So very good. So that brokenness inside of Jason, and I think Craig probably sees that now, could have been much better served, much better helped, much better outcome had Jason done it that way instead of getting right to the sending first. He jumped out of one bad situation directly into another. And unfortunately, the bad situation was the situation he was into with people who truly loved him. I mean, I felt it coming right out of my Kindle, right in my face here, where I feel like Craig, he loved Jason. He didn't want this for Jason. I mean, clearly he didn't want this for Jason, but it breaks Craig's heart, because what Craig was seeing was a whole ton of potential that's now snuffed out. And I think that's the hardest part for Craig, because they had a vision, they had a plan. We're going to talk about that, of what was going to happen for Jason. And again, obviously was not this. Yes, Teresa, he does not want us to be broken. He wants us to heal, grow, and rise above. And when you make choices like Jason made, can't happen. At least doesn't happen. So, okay, so part of the plan here, it says, if you keep on reading down, was that Jason, hold on here. Jason dreamed about his joining our staff one day in the near future. So Jason had a dream that, of joining the staff, and that these are Craig's words, and I'll take him at his word. Why do you think Jason wanted that? Why do you think Jason wanted to come on the staff? What do you think he was looking for? Anna Kay, I think we're using the word selfish in different ways. It is a selfish act, but I absolutely agree with you that there was something going on with him. Something that was happening that defies our explanation. And so again, and I want to be very clear. I'm going to continue to be clear about this. I'm not blaming Jason. Jason had more going on than Jason could deal with. Unfortunately, he didn't allow the redemption process, as we see here, to happen. So he clearly was in a situation over his head, and he clearly didn't have what he needed to deal with that. I think God, through Craig and the church and many of others' connection, was trying to get that for him. Unfortunately, Jason didn't allow time for it to happen. So let's see here. We got redemption. We got belonging. Right the wrong that he did. Again, whatever that wrong was, Darren, good. He wanted to feel needed, safe, and loved. Gene, I think there's clearly that was going on. He wanted to belong somewhere. He's looking for answers and solutions in a safe environment. Yeah, you guys got it. I mean, why would he not want to? He clearly had an affection for this church and for Craig, or else he wouldn't have left his other life behind. No matter how bad that life was, he was still stepping into the unknown. And we've had a long conversation about how we as people aren't terribly thrilled with stepping into the unknown, but he did it. And he was looking for just those things. So now, unfortunately, he wanted to get back right with God, Kim. I agree with that too. Unfortunately, I think, though, Jason's desire to get on a church staff and to be there and be a part of what was going on, and I'm sure the church was doing some great things at that time, and he was excited about that. No question about any of that. But one of the things that we need to keep in mind, and this is hard, is that there's definitely a reputation that goes with serving a church. There's a reputation. I don't know. There's probably a better word for it than that, but there's a reputation that goes with that you got to maintain, and that's sometimes a lot of work, even in the best of circumstances. So somebody who had some shady problems in the past, again, I'm not going to speculate as to what they were, but had a past that was obviously following him to this new situation. How is Jason working real hard to try to maintain that reputation, and how might that have finally caused him to break with what was going on? Because I mean, I can imagine, Jason wanted this to work. I firmly believe that he wanted this to work, and I think once Craig was finally on to whatever was happening. Again, I don't know what it was. I think that when Craig had to confront him, he realized, I've been found out. The reputation here is damaged. The pastor's trust in me is damaged, and that's not a great way to get a job on church staff. And Jason may have realized that, and so to speak, the gig was up, and that's a tough situation. But trying to maintain that facade, trying to maintain that image, trying to maintain that reputation, it's hard work. It's exhausting sometimes. And I think since Jason already had, as Anna Kay mentioned, he had some difficult things going on, keeping up that facade got to be exhausting. So, yeah, Candy. Yeah, thinking about others, that's hard. It's hard. It's hard for people to do in that situation, but clearly it's not happening. Randy being held to that higher standard, and Jason, he's already the pastor of a church, so he was aware of this, and so he was aware of that kind of pedestal mentality that a lot of people have around church workers, and to have to be able to maintain that's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of work, and I'm wondering if that eventually didn't start to run Jason down or run Jason out because of all the energy it takes to try to maintain something that I think he questioned deep down whether he was or wasn't, because of whatever this problem was. Yeah, Teresa, Satan told Jason lots of lies here. I don't think there's no doubt about that. And that's what makes this so hard, is because Jason listened to Craig say, whatever this is, got to stop. He clearly heard him say that, but all the grace and mercy that Craig was preaching and talking about, unfortunately, Jason missed all that because Satan closed his ears. Yeah. He wasn't walking the walk, and Kim, clearly there were some questions, about what was going on. At the same time, I'm wondering if trying to will himself into walking that walk, I'm wondering if part of that pressure didn't become part of the problem here. Again, I can't know that, but part of my speculation is that. Okay. The very next sentence, after he had this dream of joining the staff, Craig says, he quickly became my closest friend, my confidant, and my ministry partner. Do you think that was a good thing? Was that a good thing to have happen? Now, this is a tough question. So think about that. Jason moved into town and he became the pastor's closest friend, his confidant, his ministry partner. Do you think that was a good thing for everyone involved? Yeah, Randy, it would have been real hard to walk away from his dream if that's the dream that he had. No doubt about that. Do you think the fact that he was in this close of a relationship with Craig, do you think that was a good thing? I know this is hard, isn't it? Yeah, Anna Kay, he probably ramped up that higher standard trying to compensate. I absolutely agree with that. And that was a lot of the pressure he was feeling. With the info that Craig had, yes, but hindsight's 2020. Very good, Darren. You're an astute guy there. If Craig knew his secrets, no, it wasn't. Again, if. And those are big ifs that we don't know. It was more pressure on Jason, Beth. You're absolutely right. And this is the problem. Because my next question, you guys are already answering. My next question was going to be, do you think that a relationship like this was too much for Jason? Clearly, yes. Again, and there's no blame here because there's no way Craig could have known that. But I can tell you, that's okay, Cheryl. Welcome. Glad to have you. But I can tell you that, this relationship would have been pretty intense. And I don't put any of that on Craig. It's just because, yes, Anna Kay, there are boundaries there. And we pastors struggle with that because we know a lot of people, but there's not a lot of connection that goes on with that. And I made a note here, and I'm just going to read this note right out of my stuff here. This is why pastors are generally lonely people, because personal relationships are very hard. Jason came to Craig looking for something more than friendship, and Craig was not aware of this until it was too late. Craig, now listen to this comparison. Craig wanted an equal. Jason wanted a parent. And this is an incredibly dangerous scenario. Craig wanted an equal, and Jason wanted a parent. Jason needed somebody to latch onto to keep him out of trouble. Craig wanted somebody that he could work next to. Those are mutually exclusive needs. And this is why it's so hard for clergy, because my whole life is here around this church. So is Craig's. He was working hard to do this. Everybody he knew was affiliated with the church. He knew very few people outside of the church, because most of the people that he met outside of the church became a part of the church. And it's really hard. Friendships get to be really hard in that scenario because a lot of people who are really excited to get close to a ministry leader like that have an ulterior motive. They want somebody to help them straighten up. They wanted somebody to be a mentor. Yes, Eric, you're right. And yeah, the relationship may not have been good for Craig, and it certainly wasn't good for Jason because a lot of leaders are lonely, Bill, and I know you know that very well because it's really hard, you know. And Craig actually talked about this a little bit last week when he talked about some staff he had to let go, and he was friends with many of them, and even some of his own family members he had to get rid of and things. That's hard. That's a hard place to be. And Craig may have been looking for a friend, and he may have been a little too eager to pick one up. Again, no blame on Craig. I mean, Craig's heart was pure here, but this is why leaders struggle, and particularly struggle in churches because working in a church is so consuming. Everything in your life becomes about the church. You know, it's a job you never go home from. It's a uniform you never take off, and it's hard. And I think what happened here is Jason knew he was in trouble. I mean, I'm sorry, he knew he was having trouble, and things were not going well in his previous church, obviously, or else he wouldn't have left. And so he left for this volunteer position in this church because he needed a fresh start. And in Craig, he saw somebody he could latch onto for help. And Craig looked at him and saw a colleague. This is another pastor. And, we could bounce ideas off each other. Maybe someday we could bring him on staff and we could work together. And I'm sure they bonded, had chemistry, really enjoyed each other's company. And that ended up hurting both of them horribly. Because when Craig, had to go speak to Jason, friend to friend, Jason heard that as critical words from an authority figure. Craig went to speak to him. Jason heard him speak at him. Does that make sense? And that hurt a lot more because both sides of this had different ideas of what this relationship was. Craig thought they were two equals. Jason thought that one was the parental figure, the mentor, somebody said. That's hard. That's real hard. And that's why any of you who are ever in a leadership position of any kind, be very, very careful about people who want to latch onto you too quickly. You personally. I mean, there are people who will latch around you for your professional, whatever. And that happens. It's supposed to happen. That's important. But if you're ever in a leadership position and somebody wants to latch on you personally because of that, tread carefully. Take it for somebody who has been nuked by that a lot of times. I still have scars from some of that. And maybe that's why I'm a little bit less critical of Craig than maybe some of you want me to be. Not that I've had this, it's never went this far. But I know the temptation of seeing somebody and wanting to have a connection with them and them looking for something totally different than you are. Yeah. Yes, Randy. That's what it became for Jason, was like the disapproving of a parent, which, again, knowing nothing about this, my guess would be Jason had a lot of disapproving encounters with parental figures. That would be my guess. And where Jason thought that Craig was a special connection, turns out Craig was just like the rest of them because Jason struggled and needed help. So, okay, let's turn the page. This short chapter is taking us a little while to get through. So, okay, I'm going to skip some of these notes I've made here because oh my word, it's 8:45. Okay, so you know what happens? Something comes down the pike. I, again, don't know what it was, but something happened. Craig was put in a position where I have to say something to my friend. I have to go have a conversation. The conversation does not go well. That's me understating it. There's a blow up. And then instead of, yeah, Anna Kay, I know you have in nursing. I'm sure you've been there. So the situation does not go well. Jason does not respond in the way Craig, I think, was hoping he would. I think Craig probably knew this is what was coming, but all of a sudden, in one very, very terrible moment, both Craig and Jason realized both of them were wrong about what this relationship was. Craig thought they were equals. Jason thought Craig was the mentor. And because of their different approaches to what this relationship was, it had been working up to this point. But like all conflict does, when this conflict came into the problem, came into the situation, it revealed all the weaknesses. And the biggest weakness in this relationship was two people approaching it from different directions. Candy, did it happen at Craig's church too? I'm assuming that whatever Jason had happened, and again, there's no indication as to what that was, but whatever was happened, it did happen at Craig's church. Now, again, not knowing what it was, it could have also happened in the previous church. I don't know that Craig says that outright, but he made it sound like it was something that had been following Jason around for quite a while. And as a person who struggled with it, whatever it was, it showed up again, as these kind of problems typically do. So yes, it was something in Craig's church, and it happened while Jason was a part of Craig's church, and that's why Craig had to address it, and he did. Now, in addressing it, the situation did, as I've made extremely clear, did not go well by any way you could define going well. Jason responded, or Craig, put it out there, and I'm sure, and think of it this way. Anytime that you've had to confront somebody, how do you confront somebody? I mean, because there's basically three kinds of relationships that we have with people. We have a relationship with somebody who's above us. Maybe they're more advanced, more experienced. They are your boss at the job, whatever. They're above us. You have a relationship. You have peers where it's eye to eye, and then you have people who you are in charge of, and they're in respects beneath you. Okay, so you've all had these things. So you can imagine if you're going expecting this kind of conversation, and this person's expecting this kind of a conversation. Do you see how we're missing each other here? I mean, that's my very rough analogy, but that's exactly what happened. Craig went talking like this, and it just went right on over. And Jason took the low road and cut him right at the knees. And that's that. And so when Jason was like, "What are you talking about?" I mean, I don't know. I mean, when Jason was doing that, and Craig was going, "Why aren't we talking like adults here?" And all of a sudden, bam! It was just in this terrible moment. Both of them realized that they misunderstood this relationship. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about this because I've been there. That is a terrible, terrible, terrible moment when suddenly you're realizing the person you're talking to was looking at you in a way you didn't realize, and that was going both ways. And so in this terrible moment, made worse by the fact that it wasn't like a positive situation to start with, because Jason had again done something, I don't know what it was. So now you've got sort of this planetary alignment situation where everything wrong that could possibly go wrong has just ignited at the same moment. And Jason storms out, and Craig is left going, "What on earth just happened here?" Had no idea. Both of them were shocked. Both of them were hurt. Both of them were disappointed, both in the other one and in themselves. And both of them were completely confused about how, in the name of God, did we get to this point? That's what they're wondering. And any of you who've ever misjudged a relationship like that, man, you know that that is just a terrible moment when suddenly the glasses come off, and you see something for what it really is for the first time. And not only do you regret losing what you had, now you're seeing something you don't want to see, and you feel dumb because you didn't see it before. Because the biggest thing that Craig is going to be saying to himself to this very day is, how did I not see this? But he didn't. And it's not his fault. But that's the regret he's going to carry, because many of us who've been in charge of people carry that same regret. So, in the situation when they both realize that they had made this, not mistake, but they both had misinterpreted what was going on, Craig says, well, I'll let him cool off. He had a bad moment. He's mad I did this. And he even says this here, pretty soon we'll talk it out. And 2 weeks from now, we're going to be laughing about how dumb this was. And I'm going to call him a knucklehead, and I'm going to tell him not to do it again. And we're going to go on. And a couple months from now, this ain't even going to be a thing no more. Why did he think that? Because that's how equals deal with each other. And to all of you ladies in the crowd, that's how men deal with each other. We blow up, we get mad, we brew about it for 2 days, then we get back together, we call each other a knucklehead, one guy gives the other one of these, and we all go on. That's guys. And that's exactly what Craig thought he would do. He and Jason were buddies, remember. They were friends. They were comrades. So Craig thought. And so that's what he was expecting. Is pretty soon we're going to be yucking it up over this, just like men do. And it's going to be one of these things where we both got our feathers ruffled, and now we're both dumb, and we're going to make fun of each other. We're going to laugh about it. That's exactly what Craig thought would happen. Why? Because 99% of all the rest of the times that you have this kind of a misunderstanding with an equal, that's what happens. You're mad for 2 days, then you meet again, and you both, and then you're all better. That's how this works. Sorry, ladies, to let you in on man stuff, but is a really important thing to men, so don't you underestimate it. But that's what he thought was going to happen. And that's not, though, how you deal with somebody who is you're in charge of. If Craig, and again, I'm not trying to cast dispersion on Jason, but I just want you to hear my example. If Craig had this exact same experience with a teenager, he would never have left it go this far. Never. Because Craig would have went into that situation clearly understanding the power dynamic that he, again, did not realize with Jason. And again, I hold no fault to Craig for that. But he didn't respect the power dynamic. Had he been talking to a 17-year-old, he absolutely would have. And he would have, and if the kid would have responded this way, he'd let the kid storm off, and he'd have been like, all right, that's enough. And he would have went and found him. That's because in that situation, Craig would have understood the power dynamic. In this situation, he did not, because the power dynamic had been withheld from him. Again, I don't think it was intentional. I think Jason thought we all understand what's going on here. But Craig didn't. And where Jason thought Craig had this under control, Craig the whole time was thinking, me and Jason, man, we're buds. We're like this. Again, he would never have done that with a 17-year-old. He would have known better. But because of what was going on here, he did not realize what he was into. And by the time he realized how neck deep he was in this, it unfortunately was too late. Y'all with me still? Nobody's commented for a while. Y'all with me on that example? Do you see how Craig and Jason both made a mistake here? And this is not well, you should have known better mistake. This is an honest mistake. That's what it was. It was an honest mistake. So, and a couple of you comment here. Let me make sure. Am I even online anymore? Everybody's got it going. All right, there. All right, hey guys, welcome back. Okay, I hope you were just listening to that, or maybe you were, checking your Google something or other. But that's what happened here. It was an honest mistake made by both men. Okay. Yes, Cheryl, absolutely. Sometimes our past is pouring fuel on what could be just a little spark and making it a forest fire. And again, there's no question that's what happened here. So very good. So Craig had all these expectations about what was going to happen. And because of the lack of respect or lack of understanding, that's the wrong word. I didn't mean that. I mean the lack of understanding of the power dynamic. This thing spiraled out of control in the worst possible way. Okay. So after 2 weeks, It says 2 weeks later, I just finished preaching a message titled "Loving Those You Don't Like." Sometimes God twists the knife on us. I don't know why Craig let this go 2 weeks. This doesn't sound like that seems like a pretty long time to stew on it. Because again, even up to this point, Craig was still thinking that we're doing this like men, we're gonna and we're gonna do all this stuff. That he's still thinking that. So for 2 weeks, he kind of let this go. He was letting Jason cool off because again, that's what equals do. It is absolutely a human mistake. Don't doubt that. So he made this human mistake, and he was thinking that we were still equals because again, it's a guy thing. It's just how it works. And so he was expecting that any day now something would happen. So during the sermon, where Craig is preaching a sermon on loving those you don't like, God's like, "Hey, Craig, how about the situation with Jason?" And Craig's going, "Now I'm the knucklehead. Yes, I'll call that doofus. I'll tell him he's an idiot and just go play golf or do something and everything will be hunky dory." So God, I'm sure had been late. I cannot imagine that working on the sermon all week, that it was on Sunday morning that Craig finally was like, "Oh my gosh, Jason." I'm sure Jason had been brewing in his heart all week. And then in the power of worship amongst God's people, which we all have been missing for a while now. In that moment, the Holy Spirit is moving. And Craig said, "I got to make this right. I'm going to go with my hat in my hand and do something about this." Yeah, Darren, life gets in the way. It certainly does. No question about that. And that's what happened here. These two guys, had their little dust up, and Craig was, he had other things to do. It wasn't that Jason wasn't a priority. It's just Craig wanted to make sure enough time went by that he wasn't going to have to wasn't going to have to go through that again. So he comes home from church. He again, this must have been long enough ago that cell phones weren't a thing. So no, Joyce, it does not say how he did it. At least it hasn't yet. And I read part of the next chapter. There are no details given about Jason's life. In fact, I just want to say Jason's not even this guy's name. So I don't know anything else about the details as far as what happened. So Craig goes with his hat in his hand. He's walking toward the landline phone. And for those of you who may not remember answering machines, there were these big boxes we hooked to our phone line that would answer the phone when we weren't there. And so it's blinking. And yes, Kim, because that first move is hard, no doubt about it, because there's some crow eating that's going to go on here. And Craig knows it. But after 2 weeks, he doesn't care anymore. My friend is more important than this. So he's going to call, and he notices the little blinky light on the answering machine. And to those of you who remember answering machines, you know what that means. He pushes the button, and his whole world gets rocked. It's Jason's wife, and the unthinkable has happened. So my last question for this, because we're going to continue this discussion in tomorrow's conversation. Do you find it interesting that even after what happened, Jason's wife called Craig? Again, and we may find out later, but from what I've read so far, there was no note. I will tell you, I did read in the next chapter that Jason's wife and 2 kids came to live with Craig and his wife for a while afterwards. So, I mean, they took them in, loved them until they kind of got things together. So, I don't think there was any hard feelings on behalf of his wife, or she wouldn't have done that. You know, it was just why do you think after what had happened, why did Jason's wife call Craig? And obviously, I mean, given the timing of this, she called him on a Sunday morning. Now, again, the timing may not be relevant at all, but that's when she called him. Yep, she knew Jason trusted Craig. Cool hand, Luke. Yep. My guess is, yes, Cheryl, you got it. Uh, my guess is his wife understood the relationship better than Craig did, and knew that Craig would be the one to know what to do. And Craig did the service for Jason, and I'm sure it was it was bad, I'm sure. And but he did that because he loved his friend, even though what had happened here, was terrible. And so he stepped up and did that. He was Jason's best friend, Susan, exactly. She knew that Craig meant a lot to Jason. Joyce, absolutely. Craig was obviously a blessing to Jason. Teresa, yeah, you guys got this. And she knew where she could go for help. And Craig and his wife, who were, I can't say as devastated, but they were quite devastated themselves. Took his family in, and I believe to this day is still intervening in their lives. So, okay, I'm at 8:58. I got 2 minutes to make my point here. Understand that Craig is now broken. After this experience, Craig doesn't call up Gary and say, "Hey, Gary, is this it?" Because just as Gary told him, Gary now knows, or Craig now knows. Yeah, we're here. We're here. And Craig is going to find a new perspective on life that he never had before. And I know that, having not read many of the rest of the chapters. Craig is going to, he learned a lot about relationships with parishioners or people he's in charge of. He learned a lot about how long he should allow dust ups to dust up and how long he should wait to close the loop. He'll pay a lot more attention now to who gets close access to him personally. And he's going to be very, very cognizant of people who come to him presenting more need than a peer would. He's going to know the difference between this and this when it comes to relationships with people. He's going to be very distance, not the right word, but he's going to be very cautious. That's the word. He's going to be very cautious with people now, because now he knows. Because we can debate whether or not or what role Craig may have had in either allowing this tragedy to take place or preventing it. I mean, we could debate that forever, because we could what if this thing for the rest of eternity. But the bottom line is, Craig is going to feel some responsibility here. Now, whether he should or not, again, we can debate that. I personally say no, but I also know how we feel about things. And, again, I never had anything this bad happen. But I do know the extreme pain can come in when you don't respect power dynamics, which Craig will never, ever take for granted ever again. So it's interesting that in this role, in this situation, Jason saw Craig as the mentor, as the parental figure, yet Jason was the one who ended up teaching the lesson. And again, in a way, I'm not endorsing or anything like that, but Jason ended up being the teacher, because Craig is the one that's going to learn here. Does this harden Craig's heart? In a way, yes. In a way, yes, because nobody is going to. He's going to be very cautious about allowing people to have that close of access to him, about how much personal stuff he shares. The thing that jumped off the page at me when I read this very short chapter was the word confidant. Jason had become a confidant with Craig. That won't happen again. Not with a parishioner. Because you can have people that you talk to, bounce ideas off of, say, well, what do you think about maybe doing the donuts over here is over there? Or what do you think about a sermon series on this? Or what do you think about maybe having a new shut-in ministry, called Homebound Ministry? All those things are fantastic. And those are conversations you can have with anybody. But you got to be careful who you say, my heart hurts in this way. My struggle looks like this. I'm having problems with my wife over this. You got to be real careful who you as a leader have those kind of conversations with. So does his heart get hardened? Yes, because he doesn't wear it on his sleeve anymore. He won't ever again, because he knows the danger in that. And is that a good lesson to learn? That's a debate we can have, because a lot of people want access to leaders like that, and they want their leaders to be authentic and real and stuff like that. And yes, I mean, you're gonna have to be authentic and real, but again, you're gonna have to also understand what happens if you get yourself in a situation that you don't respect what's going on in the power dynamic. And that's a really fine line to walk. And it is ironic in a way, Anna Kay. Ironic is the perfect word for this. Um, yeah, it is sad to know that that happens. But my friends, again, what's the theme of the week? The theme of the week is breaking. Breaking is a horrible, violent experience. Those of you who were in church this morning on YouTube heard me talk about how God does not want us to be clay jars, because clay jars break. They break when the going gets tough. We need to be vessels worthy of containing the great gift that's put in us, and that is the gift of the gospel. And we need to be worthy vessels for that. And so that means not taking unnecessary risks. It also involves taking necessary risks, but sometimes you got to be careful because it can hurt people. It's all a delicate balancing act to be in charge. But look, guys, if following Christ and being a leader it was easy, anybody could do it. It would be something everybody aspired to do. It would be something that there wouldn't be any risk in it, because everything would always work out hunky-dory. Well, friends, this is the real world. And in this world, not everything works out hunky-dory. Not every story has a happy ending. But the idea is not for the happy ending. The idea is for the journey itself. And we talked about this some last night. The journey is what's important. And Craig, my friends, is on a journey now. And that's the idea of being able to journey with Christ. And it ain't always a smooth ride. So, allowing us to be vulnerable, yes, of course. But again, how vulnerable is that? Is vulnerable mean being honest? Well, clearly, yes, you got to do that. But does vulnerable mean sharing your inner stuff with people, with just anybody who asks? No, it is not. Yeah. Oh, Barb. Yeah, no worries about me. I'm farther along in this process than Craig was at the point he's talking about here. And I'm not making this about me. This is not about me. What I'm saying is when we're walking with Christ, it doesn't mean that every step is a step is a step in the a walk in the park, because it's not. Be vulnerable with God, yes. And what Craig is going to learn from this is where to be vulnerable and with whom to be vulnerable. And God, I mean, clearly, yes. But what Craig's prayers will change after this. He will be very authentic, very vulnerable, very open with God in a way he never was before, because now he knows that that's where those conversations are going to need to happen. And not always with people who come to you, who want to cling onto you, because that's what Jason did. And Craig learned an awful lesson about that. And that's part of breaking. Why do you think Craig said, I don't want to pray this prayer? Why do you think the lady at the Bible study said, I don't want to pray this prayer? I'm pretty happy where I'm at. Why would you want to pray that? Because breaking is a horrible, violent process. But God, is going to have Craig live through this so that he can learn. And I am sure that through the years, this situation has spoken into a lot of the situations Craig has come into, even where this was not a threat. This situation has spoken a lot into Craig's heart that has informed him in a lot of things that have happened since then. Craig has redeemed many, many, many times over this situation with Jason, because a lot of what Craig has been able to do since has been empowered and informed by what happened here with Jason. Does that make it worth it? Absolutely not. Craig would give this lesson back in a heartbeat if he could. But since he can't, he's allowed God to use this horrible situation in his life to help a lot of situations since, including this online group here in St. Mary's where we're talking about this thing. And it happened a long time ago because it was the message came on an answering machine, and those things haven't existed in 20 years. So, that's where we are today. So it's been something Craig has lived with and lived into for quite a while. So when you get when something happens that breaks you like this, that's where you go. So heavy tonight, heavy stuff, heavy stuff. I hope I haven't overwhelmed you with any of these things, because this, and look, being broken by God is not easy. This isn't about little things like quarantines and that kind of stuff. This is heavy. This is life altering stuff. And Craig was never the same after that, I'm sure. And so that's what it means to be broken. Once something is broken, it's never as it was again. And I'm sure that Craig's heart and Craig's approach to people was never the same again after this experience. And that's what it means to be broken by God. So, all right, guys. Jump in the comments. Tell me where you're at. What's happening? So somebody jump over in the live chat. Tell me where you guys are. Everybody still with me? Everybody good? Praying about God breaking you, friends. It's a risky proposition, because thank you, Cool Hand Luke. Luke is my hype man. I need y'all to know that. So, yeah. So, good deal. Guys, it's a journey, and it's hard. And that's why we do it together. Because this is the idea of discerning God's will and living into God's future for us is not for the faint of heart. And I know all of you here. I'm probably the only person who knows everyone here. And I'm telling you right now, not one of you are faint of heart. And I'm proud of you for that. Thanks for coming out for this tonight. You guys are awesome. Of course, I'm just telling you stuff you already knew. So, all right. Anybody else got anything for the good of the order before I cut you all loose to go to bed tonight? Teresa, it's the honor of my life, and I mean that sincerely. There you go, Candy. We don't shy away from a challenge. Soft hearts don't get broken easy. The hardest heart needs to be broken to let him in. Yep. That's true, Joe. You are more than welcome, Randy. Thanks for being here. Jess, this study, you deserve a lot of credit. You're the one that opened this book up to me and asked me to do this. I don't know if I've said this before. I'm going to say it here tonight just so everybody knows. This book was actually going to be a book study we were going to do after Easter, and it was going to have a once-a-week meeting. We were going to meet on Monday nights to discuss the chapters. This study took on a whole different life of its own because of COVID-19. So I don't know that the study we're having now would have been able to be replicated in any other circumstance than what we're doing now. And again, God works in mysterious ways. And so here we are having a nightly study with, we've had over 40 people, as Cool Hand Luke said there tonight. So, yeah, we're all here to do this. So I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you so much for sharing your evenings here with me. It is an unforeseen blessing, Cheryl. That is exactly what it is. And Jess couldn't have done without you. So you're welcome, Candy. Thank you. You guys are awesome. I hope you all have a good night's sleep. Come back tomorrow. We're going to continue learning about what happened with Jason's situation. And you guys are getting ahead of me now, which I love. It means you guys are paying attention. So, Crystal, you're welcome. She'll thank you. Teresa, love you all back. I love you all very much. As we're signing off, you all know what you need to go do. What do I tell you to do every night right about this time? Let's see. It seems like something with go wash your hands. Have a good evening, everybody.